So in today's session, first up, Amy and Bree will talk a little bit about the background of the GCC's new Professional Development Committee and initiative. Well, she'll also present the highlights of our Professional Development Committee report, including a new competency framework for describing the work that we do as graduate and postdoc career professionals. We'll talk about the highlights of that report, and then hand it over to Pallavi for the breakout discussions. Again, we want you to get the most out of this session by identifying opportunities to further develop your skills as career professionals through the GCC. We're also interested in hearing your thoughts on new ideas for professional development programming. Thanks again and welcome, y'all. I will hand it over to Amy to explain Amy and Bree to explain a little bit about the background of our new professional development initiative.
Great. Thanks so much, Katie. And welcome everyone. I'm super excited about this session and to see so many people and faces today. So I'm Bree Connick. I am currently the president of GCC, and to give a little bit of background for those of you who might not be members currently or those that just need a refresher, the GCC is an international organization comprised of higher ed professionals who lead the career and professional development for grad students and postdocs. We've been around since 1987, but have only actually been incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit since about 2015, so only about 6 years. You can see some of our mission and value statements here, and that the GCC is really here to provide support to you as members. So we are here to really engage this unique nexus of expertise, resources, and people that are within this community of practice. Katie, if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. All right. So I wanted to explain a little bit about how this committee has come about, as it might be relevant. As you know, GCC has grown in leaps and bounds over the past couple of years in particular, and absolutely since 1987 when we started with a very small group of, I think, 20 or 30 people. So as GCC has grown in membership, the range of opportunities for professional development has similarly expanded, but not everyone is aware of these opportunities available or how to really navigate that. And so in 2020, in August last year, the Professional Development Committee was charged and formed with the idea behind conducting really a comprehensive assessment. So what are the professional development opportunities that already currently exist within the GCC? Then they were asked to conduct a gap analysis on what members need and want and prepare a report on those existing opportunities, as well as those recommendations for innovative new offerings. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. And I'll kick it over to Amy for discussing the objectives.
Thanks, Bree. It's good to see everybody. So we had to take a little bit of a step back with our committee in the beginning. So we realized that we needed to think a little bit more about the kinds of skills and competencies folks wanted to develop in the profession and needed to develop in the profession as it grew and new positions were coming online. So we're really excited today to preview the new competencies that our committee has been working on for our field. And hear from you about those, and also really think through the different ways through the GCC that you can further develop your skills and competencies as you want to grow in the field, or maybe even pivot and leave the field and go pursue something else, which many of our members have done actually now. And also help you all give us insight as a committee onto the sorts of things that you would like to see us further develop in terms of programming and workshops, and towards that end, conference sessions, etc. So those are our objectives for today. All right, we can go on. So we had to first kind of take a step back as a committee in August and think about what are our competencies? And rather than reinvent the wheel in good GCC fashion, we went to a partner or an organization that sort of has done a lot of this work over the years, which is the National Association for colleges and employers. And we took a look at their competencies because in some ways our professions are fairly aligned. Some of us are actually members of NACE. So we thought that would be a good place to start and then build off of that. So the original committee took a look at those competencies, took a lot of them that made a lot of sense for our profession, and then adapted and modified some of them to fit our population and some of the other areas that we work in that might be very different from folks that are in more undergrad central office centric offices and maybe working more intensely sort of in that employer engagement space that some of us don't work in. Some of us do. So, and again, we had to think about this in terms of all the variety of roles that we all have and the different sorts of offices that we sit in across our institutional types. So it was quite an interesting several meetings of discussions, and as our committee grew this fall, we added new perspectives. So we really feel like we have a very comprehensive list. It's at times overwhelming to look at all the skills and competencies, but we realize not everybody has all of these or uses all of these every day in their roles. So we came up with these 12 broad competency areas, and they are, as you can see here, coaching, career coaching, advising, counseling. We've sort of bucketed them. Communications, diversity, inclusivity, cultural awareness, finance and budgeting, information management, knowledge of population disciplines, leadership management administration, marketing outreach technology, mentoring, training, teaching, education, program and event administration, relationship building and networking, research assessment and evaluation. So that's a lot to think about. And I think, again, as we were developing these, we realized there were things within the NACE competency framework that were missing for us. So just to point out a few things, knowledge of population and discipline. We work with a very specialized population of PhDs, graduate masters, and postdocs. So we needed to kind of add that one in there. That really wasn't apparent in the NACE competencies. We also needed to think about technology, and we really wanted to add in that emphasis on diversity, inclusivity, and cultural awareness as a competency. And so as you kind of look at these broad areas, we also reflected a little bit that you could almost categorize them in two areas of sort of the people-facing, relationship building types of skill sets, and more the operational sorts of jobs that we have and aspects of our jobs that we have to do. So we developed a color coding system that you'll see kind of throughout the rest of the presentation and into the self-assessment that we've developed to help distinguish each of these as unique competencies in our field. And this has really been an evolving process, and every time we share what we're thinking about, we get great feedback from folks, the committee chairs and other folks that help refine this. So it's definitely, getting there, but still a work in progress. And I'm going to kick it over to Katie.
Yeah, so our committee too was tasked with surveying opportunities within the GCC to cultivate each of these competencies and conduct a comprehensive assessment of professional development opportunities within the GCC as an organization. For example, there are GCC members who lead as volunteers each of our 15 committees, as well as those who write for our Inside Higher Ed blog, Carpe Careers, those who participate in pre-conference trainings, as well as other activities like informal communities of practice that grew up around GCC. As in taking the first steps, we really wanted to gather and quantify professional development knowledge, opportunities, and skills developed by committee members. So we focused a survey on committee chairs and asked them to identify which competencies were developed by volunteering through their committees. That was our work in fall 2020. We also conducted some follow-up interviews with the 15 committee chairs to get a more in-depth perspective. So I will walk through some of the key highlights and takeaways from the survey results. This chart reflects the distribution of the broad competency areas, the 12 areas, the 12 broad bucket areas that Amy introduced. And so the y-axis too represents the number of the percentage of GCC committees that cultivate 3 or more subcompetencies within these broad skill areas. So as you can see, like for example, 12 committees cultivate 3 or more skills in leadership, management, and relationship building. As we can see from these results too, the people side of the house looms large. Skills, transferable skills like leadership, marketing, outreach, information management, and research assessment. Likewise too, there's some skills too we identified that are a bit more specialized, more concentrated in a handful of committees. So things like finance and budgeting and technology. We also went in depth and looked at the top sub-competencies. So each of the broad bucket areas, the areas like marketing, outreach, leadership, and research, each of these had several smaller sub-competencies for a total of more than 80 sub-competencies or skills. The top 15, so this is a list of the top 15 sub-competencies across the 15 GCC committees with the percentage of the 15 committees cultivating that skill. As we can see here too, both technical and people-facing skills loom large. Things like just dissemination of information, organization of events, project management, written and interpersonal communication, but also that it's interesting to note too that 60% or more of committees cultivate inclusivity, team building, needs assessment, and campus partnerships. We also identified some of the less common or more specialized competencies. GCC members may have to seek out these skills on a smaller number of committees, and a lot of these too fall more into the technology headings and things like podcasting, video production, or knowledge of specific financial systems. So I'm going to hand it over now to Pallavi, who will lead us in some breakout discussions to help you identify ways to identify your competencies and continue building them through the GCC.
So hello, everyone. Thank you, Katie. Thanks for your, and Bree and Amy. So what we're going to do now is work on the competency worksheet, and you should have received that yesterday along with the Zoom link. If not, I will share it in the chat folder, chat box just now, if you give me 1 minute. Yeah. So, many of you must be seeing these competencies for the first time, or not everything applies to all of us today. So we understand that. So this is a way for us to become familiar with the range of competencies that exist. So please keep working on it. This is not the only session. This is something for you to have. So that's why it's being shared, and you can keep working on it throughout the next year or so if needed. So now what we're going to do is put you all in separate breakout rooms. I see about 35 people, so I'm just going to create like 5 or 6 breakout rooms. And the goal in the breakout rooms is that you get a chance to discuss with others about one subcompetency or skill area that you would like to work on, and what steps you would like to take in the near future to work on this skill. So we hope this small group discussion will let you kind of flesh out some of the subcompetencies and the areas that you just saw in the worksheet.
Frame like new to mid-career in this space that really need more help and access to leadership and budgetary, the kind of management situations. Like many of us have come from a science background and might not have that background or access. So that was something that it's good to know we're not alone in.
Thank you, Amanda. Anybody else? I heard another voice, sorry.
I can share quickly. A common theme in our group was around being surprised by some of the skills that were on the list that they hadn't really thought of, like, for example, grant writing skills or budgeting, financial skills, because those just aren't part of their roles and their positions yet. And that kind of makes me think about, when we were designing these competencies, we didn't get to sort of that basic, intermediate, advanced level of these sorts of skills yet. So that's something, that will be forthcoming, and also that, how we have to advocate for ourselves, because so many of our offices are understaffed, and we're all stretched really thin with as you can see by the list of things that many of us do, all that we have to do.
Yeah, I think that was one thing, again, Amy, you put it well, that as we were collecting all these competencies, we were not sure if we wanted to put them in the levels, like the ranking of, is it at the beginning level, intermediary, or advanced level? And so this is something, again, this is one version. Maybe the next version that we will think about, we will surely consider that. I see your hand raised. Please unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi, this is Blessing. Our group, we were talking about the information management area. We're a little confused about what that really meant. Like when I first read it, I thought of it as information management having to do with technology. But then we noticed that marketing and technology are together. So there could be more clarity in that, that grouping, perhaps.
Yeah, okay, point taken. So would budgeting be a good topic for a GCC meeting session submission? I think that's great, yes. I see two other hands raised. Please feel free to unmute and ask.
Hey, Palawi, this is Becca. In our group, we talked about if you're new to one-on-ones with trainees, there's a Coursera coaching course that's done by Case Western Reserve. That's great. There's also NIH-OITE is the national branch, like central for NIH, and they do a really great Train the Trainer, or T3, every other year typically. And there's also more formal certifications, but those are great ways to get started. And I forgot to mention this in our breakout room, but there's also a GCC community of practice around coaching if you want to find buddies to practice with too.
Yeah, NIH Train the Trainer, it's really fantastic. I mean, it's held every other year, so it's not going to be this year, maybe next year. And you'll hear that through the GCC message boards. So thank you, everyone. We have a couple of other activities, and, we want to hear about, first from each of you. And so we want to see what is one skill that you would like to work on. So I'm going to be sharing, this is the information for Poll Everywhere. I would just want you to note that, and I'm going to put it even in the chat box. And there is a prompt in the Poll Everywhere for generating a word cloud. So we're going to look at one skill from each of you who is here to see what is the visual that will come up. So what is one skill that we would all like to work on? So to put the poll link here in the chat box. This is fantastic. This is just what we were hoping, because this gives us ideas and direction about how we should be planning our professional development committee offerings through the year. So this is just what we are looking for. Thank you. I see budgeting growing, budgeting and writing. Just take 30 more seconds, and then we'll close. Yep. So we are not done with our interactive activities. So we want to know, as our committee is planning these events, we are trying to identify what is the best way to engage with our members. What should we plan so that their needs for professional development are satisfied? So we have a short poll here, and we hope that you will see the options as a viable option for you. And you can select multiple options in this poll. So here's the poll. So we'll take about a few minutes, 5 minutes, to review all the options that we have here, and then select the ones that would apply to you or you prefer. And we can share the results and see which would kind of give us some direction, some ideas as we are planning our next events. It's great. Fantastic to see all the various methods that are appealing for developing competencies. Okay, 100% voting is done. So let's end the polling and share results. Okay, so the lead, if you're looking at the results, the lead is opportunities for focus, skill building, and information sharing. So along the lines of what we're doing, these kind of webinars that are coming almost at a frequency of 1 to 2 per month. And we're trying our best to see what could be scheduled that would have the most impact on our membership. And this is this roadshow of our presentation from our committee that happened today and will happen at 2 other regional meetings, and it also happened at the Mid-Atlantic, is just for that, to kind of gauge the pulse and the what is our membership saying, what would they like to see. So opportunities for focus, skill building, and information sharing, followed by the next is having tracks and conferences with specific themes or for specific populations, or even what we were considering is, can we think about those who are entering the profession and those who are sort of been in this area of work for several years. So can we have something that would appeal to both of these populations? So this is great. I think, Bree, this is your slide now. Would you like me to run them for you?
Yes, thank you. All right. Well, thanks everyone. We hope that this has been a nice, interactive, engaging session for all of you. And obviously the Professional Development Committee will be talking about this session and the data that we've kind of collected going forward. But I did want to take just a few minutes to talk about current opportunities that are available to you as members of the GCC. So we do have 12 committees. So these slides will be shared with you after the session, but these committees are made up, we're all volunteers, but as you see from the worksheet, that a lot of the committees are where we found these competencies and sub-competencies. So, not all of them, I think, are going to be needing a lot of volunteers right now, but the website where we have all of that information, and thank you, Chris, for popping that into the chat. You can reach out to the chair or chairs of those committees and ask kind of, what are you working on? Do you need kind of more volunteers right now? But this is an excellent way to start building professional development in a very strategic way. We have some communities of practice, which I'll talk about in the next slide. And then, of course, upcoming pop-up webinars, which we have some details. We're finishing up our regional meetings right now, but this can be a really great way of hearing some best practices, or if you're getting involved in helping to plan a regional meeting, then that can also develop some of your own skill sets. And then just a heads up for some upcoming things over the next couple of months, and that we do have elections for board members as well as for regional directors. So these have not been announced, but these are very specific ways in which to develop yourself professionally, get further involved with the GCC, and continue to build community. Next slide, Flavie, please.
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
There you go.
Oh, so I think we need to hit.
Yeah, here you are.
Thank you. Yep. So I just wanted to give a little bit more detail about the communities of practice. So we, these communities of practice are really informal. They're a platform really for discussion around specific topics, but also to facilitate further networking. So some of the communities of practice that are currently happening through JCC members is coaching with Danuka and Ketan, developing mentorship programs, again with Danuka and then Shaylee, micro-credentials or certificate programs with Katie and Sasha, and international and immigrant GCC members with Sonali as the lead for those. So these are great ways to start getting involved on very topical focused sessions. So feel free to reach out directly to those members about getting more details. And then the next slide,
Okay,
Bobby.
next slide.
And you know, we can't have a professional we can't have a professional development webinar without talking about your own professional development and some next steps that we would suggest for all of you. So hopefully the worksheet will be something that you can refer back to as you move forward in assessing yourself and where you'd like to grow. But consider setting a SMART goal, something that you want to work on maybe over the next 6 months to a year. And then some other next steps that will just help the GCC continue to gather pertinent data and information. We have the membership survey or benchmarking survey will come out in the next couple of weeks. That is an incredibly important survey for the GCC, and all of that data is shared with you. We just this morning had the call for proposals for our annual conference, which will be virtual in June. So please consider submitting a proposal. It is a great way to develop an idea, work with other GCCers, and be able to get feedback on your own programs, assessments, or whatever you'd like to present. And then finally, just make sure that you're remaining interconnected. We have a fantastic community here. So please connect with us on social media, as well as use our message boards through the GCC website. And then I will kick it over to Amy for the very last slide.
All right, so what's coming up are more ways to engage with your professional development. So Cynthia is going to post a link for the March 4th PD Hub public report release event. And then following on that, which is just next week, following on that on March 31st, the PD committee is going to host a GCC community conversation on the PD Hub initiatives and ways that we can get engaged as GCC members to further our own involvement and professional development in this area. And then you can see the lineup of upcoming events through April and May of other professional development opportunities. So we just want to thank everybody for these wonderful ideas and stepping up to offer these opportunities to GCC members and by GCC members. Lots of these registration links will be coming out on the GCC website. So you can go to the events calendar on the GCC website and register. And the one for March 31st is live and accepting applications. You should have gotten a broadcast message about that. So we hope you'll all join us for that event, as well as the March 4th event. And keep sending your ideas and suggestions in to Pallavi and myself or anyone on the Professional Development Committee. We're really excited to just really ramp up all the work in this area for our community. And yeah, so follow up, ask us questions, send us ideas. We just really thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules today to be with us today.